Yo, what's happening? Yeshua Speaks, Road to Emmaus Apologetics. It's been a minute. Just wanted to first and foremost appreciate each and every one of you who have liked, shared, and subscribed this channel, who have contributed to a lot of the things that have been discussed. I am currently, again, in the process of really, in a sense, just growing this particular platform for the purpose of educating people in Christianity. You know what I'm saying? The goal of Road to Emmaus Apologetics is to educate believers, disciples in the Christian faith, to talk about things related to the Messiah who has come to save and deliver us from the power of sin and death, empower us to live a godly life through His Spirit. Um, you know, it just and just everything related to defending the faith. We proclaim that Jesus Christ is indeed the Son of God. He is the second person in the Trinity. We hold to the doctrine of the Trinity, the fact that there is one God revealed in three distinct persons, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. They were co-equal, co-eternal, and consubstantial. The one God, Yahweh, who created the heavens and the earth, who is the God of Israel, and who has, through the Messiah, revealed himself to all of humanity, that we would have life in him. And so that's the whole goal of Road to Emmaus. Hopefully, this will also serve as a means to witness and evangelize to those who are lost, seeking the truth, wanting to know more about this wonderful faith that we have, called Christianity, that is established on the death, burial, resurrection of Jesus Christ. Indeed, the Apostle Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, I believe verse 4, if I'm not mistaken, that if Christ had not risen, then our faith would be in vain. And I do not want our faith to be in vain. So, and I, and because Christ has risen, our faith is not in vain. Thank you, Jesus. And so, yeah, so let's get to it. Today, we're going to be talking really, really, really good subject. Just pull up my notes here. I've heard this notion, and it's constantly something that I'm hearing a lot being discussed among in a lot of the apologetic circles, especially coming from unbelievers, that Jesus Christ, the Son, is not God. And this is one of the oldest debates in the history of Christianity. There were those who existed in doctrinal tension to the Messianic movement who held what we call a low Christological view, whereas biblical Christianity maintained a high Christological view. Now, when I say high Christological view or high Christology, I am speaking on the view that Jesus of Nazareth, the Messiah, was a pre-existent divine person who became human, who did the Father's will on earth and then was taken back into heaven, seated at the right hand of the Father. This is in contrast to the low Christology, which is the belief that God exalted Jesus to be his son by raising him from the dead, thereby raising him to divine status. High Christology says that Jesus Christ already had divine status before he became a human being, before he took on the human nature. He has always had divine status. And when he took on human nature, he maintained his divine status as well as acquired an additional status, which was that of a human. And so, high Christology is that Jesus Christ has always been divine. He's never stopped being divine. He is always equal to the Father in deity. And so, uh, those with a low Christology do not receive their understanding from the teachings of the apostles. They hold that Jesus Christ had acquired divine status. And so they don't receive their teachings from the apostles or the very writings that established the Messianic movement in the first century, but have based their ideas on heretical movements that fuse the ideas about Jesus Christ, his works, and his miracles with foreign teachings about the divine reality that was alien to the confession of the Christian church. These false teachings were able to catch fire especially among new converts from paganism. The intellectual elites that were attracted to syncretism, as well as congregations where the bishops were not properly prepared to deal with issues like Gnosticism. So we see the issues of low Christology reflected in things like in traditions like Mormonism, Unitarianism, Arianism, the Kingdom Hall, Watchtower Society, those are Jehovah's Witnesses, and even aspects of what you call the apostolic oneness theology. It comes from it comes down to the ideas of eternal sonship versus created sonship. Eternal sonship, which is high Christology, versus created sonship, which is low Christology. Eternal sonship is the idea that Jesus Christ has always been the Son, right? And that his sonship is eternal. Without beginning, without end, he is eternally in union with the Father. Created sonship is the idea that he became that Jesus Christ became the Son of God at some point in time. You have some views that would say that he became the Son at the incarnation. You have other views that would say that he became the Son at the resurrection. Either way it goes, he became the Son at some point in time. He was not always a Son, and that is a low Christology. This is found again among groups like Mormons, Unitarians, Arians, the Jehovah's Witnesses, and even the Apostolic Oneness theological faith tradition. And one of the places that is used to make this argument, interesting enough, is the book of John, which is loaded with high Christological claims. The LC, that is low Christology believers, will go to passages like John chapter 5, verses 26 to 27. And I'm just going to go ahead and pull it up. John chapter 5, verse 26 to 27. So here is John chapter 5, verse 26 to 27, where it says, For just as the Father has life in himself, even so he gave to the Son also to have life in himself, and he gave him authority to execute judgment because he is the Son of Man. And why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing this up because um, many times, uh, 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 the LCs, that is, again, if I'm using the word LC, I'm talking about those who have a low Christology view. They will harp on words like gave to the Son and the phrase gave him authority to further state that no one needs to give God authority, and that God is not given life to us, and that God is not given life to establish that Jesus. And that God is not given life, and they use this to establish that Jesus is not God. The people that I hang with always, they always say this. They say context kills false doctrines, and I like to add that context also grants us a better understanding. So I got a slide that I put together, hopefully to help navigate us through this discussion. And let me pull that slide up. So yeah, here's the slide. It's called The Architecture of Divine Action, Resolving the Paradox of Authority, Equality, and Dependence in John chapter 5. And so here we're again, we're dealing with the issue of the fact that Jesus Christ, according to those who hold a low Christology, the LCs, that hold to low Christology, are saying that Jesus Christ is not God because he is given authority, and that he is given life, and therefore God doesn't need to be given authority. God doesn't need to be given life, and therefore Jesus Christ cannot be God. And so we're dealing with that issue. And so we're going to talk about it in the architecture of divine action. In John chapter 5, Jesus held Jesus held Jesus healed a man on the Sabbath. The Sabbath, according to the law of Moses, was a day that was set aside for rest, a cease from work. The purpose or goal of the Sabbath was intimacy with Yahweh, in which Israel acknowledges Yahweh as the source of protection, provision, and liberation. Again, the purpose of the Sabbath was that God said it was a day that was set aside where Israel was to have intimacy with Yahweh. They were not to work, and they would receive Yahweh and know Yahweh as their source of protection, provision, and liberation. What Jesus, Messiah Yeshua, did by healing this man was to establish or to reestablish the beauty of the Sabbath as the means of restoration, or as the day of restoration, or to, in a sense, make the Sabbath complete in this understanding that it's a day for restoration. And so Jesus heals a man, and instead of the religious leaders to see this as a moment of rejoicing, they see this as a moment to accuse Jesus of violating the law of the Sabbath, and which we see in verses 16 to 18. In verse 16 and 18, if you have your scriptures, John chapter 5, verse 16 and 18, what you see, what takes place. Again, John chapter 5, verses 16 to 18. In John chapter 5, verses 16 and 18, you see, as they say, for this reason, the Jews were persecuting Jesus because he was doing these things on the Sabbath. But he answered them, my father is working, my father is working until now, and I myself am working. For this reason, therefore, the Jews were seeking all the more to kill him, because he not only was breaking the Sabbath, but also was calling God his own father, making himself equal with God. Therefore, all right, we'll just stop right there for right now. So again, the fact that he's accused basically of two things. What he is accused of healing, violating Sabbath, because he's healing on the Sabbath, and he's also calling God his own father, which they would have understood he was basically making himself equal with God. And so herein lies the tensions with these two things. One, the breaking of the Sabbath. Two, calling God his own father. And so are dealing with the issues of tension, right? Let me just pull back up the screen, pull it back up the slide so you can walk with me. So the Jews, they understand Yahweh is always at work at the sustain as the sustainer of the universe, and including the very needs of Israel as protector, provider, and liberator. Therefore, if Jesus is the divine son, then he would be Yahweh, and therefore not guilty of breaking the Sabbath, because he is doing the will of the Father. So you see that the tension here, right? Jesus Christ is accused of breaking the Sabbath and then calling God his own father, which by reasonable deduction would make Jesus Christ the very son of the Father, the Son of God. And they understand that as Jesus making himself equal with God. So in this tension, um, they understood that Jesus would be claiming to be Yahweh. And if he's claiming to be Yahweh, he's not guilty of breaking the Sabbath, because he's simply doing the will of the Father as the Son. This understanding establishes a tension in this passage. Is Jesus truly the Son of God, or is he violating the Sabbath by claiming the rights to work on the Sabbath? Jesus masterfully asserts his equality with Yahweh, affirming his sonship and placing complete dependence on the Father. In other words, by stating in verse 19 that the Son can do nothing of himself but what he sees the Father doing, he affirms his unity with the Father. And so we move on to the next part of the slide, right? He's affirming his unity with the Father. So every divine act, from sustaining the universe, every miracle, including healing on the Sabbath, is from the Father through the Son, and therefore he is not in violation. They would have to bring a charge against the Father in order to bring a charge against the Son, which brings us to verse 26 and 27, which is part of a continual response by Jesus. This statement must be understood in the framework of what the Father does, therefore the Son does. So whatever the Father does, the Son does. And so we got to understand John chapter 5, verses 26 to 27 within the context of that framework. Again, the verse says that in verse 26, again, it says that just as the Father has life in himself, he's granted the Son to have life in himself, and grants the Son the rights to execute, or the authority to execute judgment as the Son of Man. So understand again the framework. The framework of this particular passage is within the context of whatever the Father does, therefore the Son does. Because this is within the context of divine unity. Dr. Grant Osborne, in his commentary, he states this. He says that the basis for this power is seen in John chapter 5, verses 26, 27, which restates Jesus's authority to give life and to judge. Both stem from the Father. First, the Father has life in himself, and so grants the Son the authority to have life in himself. The same exact language is repeated in the Greek. This is more than just life-giving power. The Father and the Son possess life. It is internal to their being and inherent in who they are. The functional aspect, that is the power to give life, flows out of the ontological, that is, they are life. Or, in other words, when you understand ontology, it's talking about the very being, the very essence of who God is, the very nature, what makes God God, right? So they're saying the power to give life flows from that thing that makes God God, his ontology. So because the Father has this ontologically, the Son would have this ontologically. And so Dr. Osborne says that this verse is the key to the Johannine idea, or the idea of John concerning the Father-Son relationship. The Father who gives life passes his authority on to the Son. Again, understand this in light of the framework that whatever the Father does, the Son does. The Father has life, therefore he grants the Son to have life. In other words, because the Father has life, the Son has life. So think of this. As the flow of life that is resident to the nature of God, which flows from the Father to the Son, that takes place in the eternal, unbroken fellowship. Just want to throw a passage in there in John chapter 1, verse 18. The scripture says that no one has seen God, the only begotten God, who is in the bosom of the Father. He has declared him. Understand the breakdown of this passage. That phrase, who is, right, where it says who is in the bosom of the Father, that phrase, who is the present participle active of verb tense in Greek, denoting that there's an unbroken relationship that is eternal, that exists with the Father and the Son, right? And the Son is in this unbroken, eternal a fellowship, relationship, communion with the Father. The word the phrase "who is," again, from the Greek "ho on," if you see it in the Septuagint, it is it is used in Exodus chapter 3, verse 14, where God reveals his name, that is his character, his nature, to Moses, where he says in the Greek, ego I me, ho on. And this is applied to the Son's relationship, his eternal existence in union with the Father in John chapter 1, verse 18. So again, you got to think of this idea of the Son having life in himself, because the Father has life in himself, as a result of the life that flows, of a life that is flow, that is resident to the very nature of who God is, which flows from the Father to the Son, and that it takes place in the eternal unbroken fellowship. um and so now in and Jesus now in divine sovereignty gives life as an act of judgment to who he desires, which is in complete unity with the Father. It is not as an act of mimicking, right? It is not as an act of mimicking or in sequence. It's not that the Father is doing the act and then the Son does the act. It is one act from the Father through the Son. Give a good example, and this is a perfect example. In there's a passage, I believe it's in John chapter 11, right? Lazarus is in the grave, he's in the tomb, and Jesus is now coming to resurrect Lazarus from the tomb, raise him from the dead. And just like in other acts where Jesus brings somebody back to life, in this particular case, Jesus Christ is he identifies himself. He says that I am the resurrection and the life. And then he now goes to proceed to calling Lazarus from the grave. What is interesting is that if you notice, it's not an act of God, of Jesus mimicking what the Father does. In other words, you don't see the Father raise Lazarus from the dead and then put Lazarus back in the tomb and then say, okay, Jesus, now you go do it. That's not what takes place. What takes place is that one single act of Lazarus being raised from the dead as a result of Jesus Christ calling Lazarus forth, or calling Lazarus from the dead. This is the Father by the means of the Son. Again, it's one act. It's not two acts. It's not the Father doing it and then the Son now goes to do it. It is the Father and the Son in divine unity raising Lazarus from the dead. And what the people see is the Son actually exercise this authority. This was a means of communicating the fact that he was indeed the Messiah, but even more than that, that he was God himself. Why? Because he, God in human flesh, is doing this act of calling Lazarus forth from the dead. And God, that is this specifically the Son, is doing this in union with the Father, who is also God. And so in divine unity, in divine action, one action takes place, and that one miracle was raising Lazarus from the dead. And this is how all the miracles took place. It was every miracle that Jesus did was an act of divine unity, a singular action of the Father in unity with the Son performing the act. Every act. So the Son receives all things from the Father through what you call eternal procession or communication of essence. Then the Son executes as the Messiah to heal, deliver from demonic oppression, and communicate the desires of the Father to the people. This is why he is again referred to as not just the Son, but he's referred to as the Logos, right? He's the very he's a full expression of God, right? And he's revealing the very mind, very reason, the very intentions of God in everything that he does. He demonstrates this, right? And so again, The Son receives all things from the Father through eternal procession or communication of essence. Then the Son executes as the Messiah to heal, deliver from demonic oppression, and communicate the desires of the Father to the people. And so the validity of of Jesus's Sabbath work rests as divine, as the divine nature of all his works, specifically, or the divine action of all his works, specifically judgment and resurrection. It is connected to his very divine nature as the Son of God in union with the Father, in union with Yahweh. Because he is the Son of God, he is Yahweh. Because he's the Son of God, he is always in union with the Father. And so this act is an act of what we call divine aseity, of the one who performs these works, namely his possession of life in himself that is granted by the Father. Understand this, right? Jesus, by the nature of being God, he has divine aseity. That is, that he has a nature that is not derived or comes from anything. Jesus Christ is uncreated. But in regards to his relationship with the Father, because he is the Son, the Father has aseity. The Son has what you call essential aseity. That is, his aseity comes from his aseity, or his existence, or his being, of his sonship. It comes from his generation from the Father. I think that's the best way to clear it up, that his generation, or his generating, it comes from the Father. And because he has the same nature of the Father, being that the Father is eternal, his generation is eternal. That's the reason why the church fathers would use the term eternal generation as a reference to the Son, explaining the Son's how the Son is proceeding, or how he's coming forth from the Father, yet he has no beginning, no end, and henceforth he is the Son, whereas the Father, who comes from no one, is unbegotten, and therefore the Son is the eternally begotten from the Father, or eternally generated from the Father. That's why he's the Son. And so, as a result of his eternal generation, or because of his eternal generation, what the Father has, the Son has. This is the reason why Jesus says that all that the Father has is mine. He's communicating again that unity that he has with the Father. And so, again, this represents not a contradiction, but a paradox. This is not a contradiction, but paradox. There is an order in divine action, involving the identity, of, or the place of nature, volition, and operation by the Son's eternal procession and reception from the Father. Jesus can claim to be both absolute. Jesus can claim to have absolute equality with God and complete dependence on the Father. Why? Because his dependence flows from his eternal nature as God's Son, not from any deficiency or subordination. Again, Jesus can claim both simultaneously. Jesus can claim both simultaneously because his dependence flows directly from his eternal procession as the Son, rather than from any place of deficiency. What the Father has, the Son has. And so logically, it would be understood that just as the Father has life in himself, he's granted the Son to have life in himself, because everything that the Father has, the Son has it. And so again, understanding John chapter 5, verses 26 and 27, within that framework of what the Father does, the Son also does, and the doing is one act in complete unity. Therefore, this scripture doesn't make Jesus less than God. It makes Jesus the very God himself. Why? Because who else? How can a creature claim to have everything that the Father has? That is impossible. Everything that the Father has, the Son has. No creature can claim that. No creature can claim that. And so that concludes the fact that Jesus Christ is indeed Yahweh, that he's indeed the very God because he is the Son of God. Therefore, he is always in union with the Father in unbroken fellowship. And therefore, whatever the Father has, the Son has. Whatever the Father says concerning himself, concerning his deity, the Son can say the same thing. There is no demarcation, no difference in regards to who the Father is and who the Son is, as within the respects of their deity, because again, Jesus Christ is indeed in complete union with the Father. And so on that note, I just wanted to end it. I hope, and my prayer is that that was clear, that was good. If you have any questions, please, saying put the message, send me a comment. I will definitely respond to it. And again, I would like to engage more and more with you guys. Any thoughts that you have, any comments, concerns that you have, put it in the comment section. If you want me to touch on a particular topic, put it in the comment section and I'll get right to it. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, do it like that. God bless you. Yeshua speaks. Peace.